You're watching the Randy and Krista Show. I'm Randy Alvarez.
And I'm Krista Recchio, and this is News That Makes You Healthier. Today we've got the best-selling author of Wheat Belly, board-certified cardiologist, Dr. William Davis. Very excited. We're both going to interview Dr. Davis.
And you're about to interview him, and this is an exciting topic. I mean, one of your favorite topics, which is the gluten problem. And so what are you anticipating with this interview today?
What I'm anticipating, well, I had posted it to our Whole Journey Facebook page. I said, what do you guys want to know? And I really want to get his take on ancient versus modern wheat. What does he think about spelt? Is it okay in small amounts? Does it not have such a bad rap in that way? And then grains, gluten-free grains like brown rice and quinoa, and if you soak them to remove the anti-nutrients, is he okay with those? His stance on legumes, and resistant starch is a really hot topic right now. I'd like to see what does he do in his personal life, and talk about how insulin affects this whole thing, and just his stance in general, his bigger mission of shifting healthcare. Because as a cardiologist, who's dealt with so many surgeries, what does he think about maybe flipping the paradigm to take accountability with diet beforehand?
On my pre-production meeting with him, he said, as a cardiologist just 10 years ago, the things he was doing and the thought process, and just throwing surgery at things, or putting stents and Lipitor, is completely different than the way he's doing it today. That he's, as you say, food is your medicine.
He said,
and that's what he does.
He said something like 70% of those surgeries are unnecessary. And so that's so refreshing to hear from a board-certified cardiologist. And hopefully for you guys too, if you're struggling with heart problems or insulin problems, to know that there is hope, and maybe you don't need that $50,000, $100,000 surgery if you can make the lifestyle adjustments that we're going to talk about today.
I also want to know what his take is on these nutritionists. They're coming on TV and saying that unless you have celiac disease, gluten's not an issue at all.
You interview him separately about that, right?
Yeah, what's your take on that?
Well, my take is that this whole hybridized wheat is an issue for everyone. It's this kind of frankenfood, and like he says, that is spiking insulin. And it's not just about the wheat, it's not just about the gluten, it's about the type of starch, the amylopectin, and it's creating, this addiction, and it's lighting up our brain receptors very similar to the way that opiates do and that drugs do. And so that's really the overarching problem with wheat, not even if you don't have a sensitivity. Like when I test myself, I have a low sensitivity to wheat and gluten, but it's still, when you're going to have this drug, so to speak, a little bit creates a craving for more, and when you take it away, you have withdrawal symptoms. That's the definition of a drug. So
okay, good.
Understand that
let's go to your interview with him.
Okay, let's do it.
All right, you're watching the Randy and Krista Show?
You're watching the Randy and Krista Show, news that makes you healthier. I am Krista Recchio, and today, you guys, you're in for a treat. We have board-certified cardiologist and author of the best-selling book, Wheat Belly. I know you've heard of it. With us today, Dr. William Davis. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Krista.
It's truly an honor to have you here, live and in person. And we're going to talk a little bit about wheat for our viewers. So let's start off just kind of basic. There's two different kinds of wheat, and what we're talking about in Wheat Belly is modern hybridized wheat that is all over our food supply now, not the ancient stuff, right?
Exactly right. So wheat is a high-yield semi-dwarf plant that stands 18 inches tall that was essentially created in a laboratory in the 1960s, but not for evil. It was created to increase yield per acre mostly, but it changed the composition. So they took something that has been a problem for human health all through the several thousand years that humans adopted into the diet, but agribusiness managed to make it much worse. And introducing foods made with high-yield semi-dwarf wheat amplified the problems. And it started to become obvious. We just have to look around ourselves and see all the people who are struggling with weight, diabetes, and autoimmune diseases, can't stop eating, incessant appetite. These are all phenomena from the new form of wheat being sold to us.
Yes, and joint pain and arthritis and all of these conditions just shooting through the roof. Now, I got a lot of questions for our people on the Facebook page, and they said, hey, can you ask Dr. Davis his take on spelt? What's your take on spelt?
Well, I'm very careful to point out that we shouldn't replace a problem with another problem or something that's just less bad. So I often draw this comparison. If we replace unfiltered cigarettes with filtered cigarettes, there may be a little less lung cancer, but I don't believe we should conclude that filtered cigarettes therefore must be good for you. So spelt is an ancient form of wheat. It lacks many of the most recent changes introduced into the modern semi-dwarf wheat, but it still has lots of problems. It still raises blood sugar high. It still can trigger autoimmune diseases. So it has plenty of problems, just not as exaggerated as modern high yields. And this is true, by the way, also for other strains of ancient wheats, like emmer wheat, that's the wheat of the Bible, or einkorn wheat that precedes even biblical times, and kamut, other forms of wheat, less harmful, but never harmless.
Okay, wow. So modern wheat, ancient wheat's out. Ezekiel products, by the way, people ask about those a lot. Those are out. That's modern hybridized wheat, which we've found out after talking to the company.
Right. Sprouting the seed, all that does is it reduces the content of some of the harmful compounds in wheat a little bit. So it'd be like saying, Krista, I've got this special cigarette. It's got a little less nicotine in it. Must therefore be good for you.
Right.
Obviously not.
Obviously not. And now when we talk about grains, we were talking in the green room. You're not a fan of grains, and we know all the gluten-free grains. You want to get them out: wheat, barley, and rye, and also corn. But then the other gluten-free grains like amaranth and quinoa and brown rice, if we soak them to remove the phytates or the anti-nutrients and combine them with enough protein and fat so that we don't get a big sugar spike. Yes or no in your book?
It's a very simple thing for people to test this themselves. So to see how you respond to different foods. This would be typical. Let's say a bowl of oatmeal or some amaranth, a non-gluten type grain. Blood sugar, 180, 170, 30 to 60 minutes after eating. If you combine it with fats, proteins, fibers, blood sugar goes up maybe only to 160. So less harmful. As you know, blood sugars of 160, which is very common, by the way, or 140 or 200 in a non-diabetic, provokes issues, right? It provokes resistance to insulin. It grows visceral fat, tummy fat, inflammatory fat. It triggers heart disease, factors like small LDL particles. It gives you high triglycerides. It causes degradation of cartilage. It causes mental effects, leads to change that provoke dementia through glycation. So high blood glucoses cause glucose to modify proteins in the body, particularly proteins you can't remake. Like cartilage proteins you have today are the same ones you had at age 18. That's why cartilage breaks down, leads to arthritis. And if you have high blood glucose, you glycate cartilage becomes brittle, and it breaks down in your hips and knees, and you've got arthritis and knee replacements and hip replacements, those sorts of things. So high blood sugars is not just about high blood sugar or diabetes, it's about many other effects in health. So I'm careful not to try to replace a problem with a different set of problems.
Yeah, so really maintaining your blood sugar is kind of the key to all of life and health, right? It's the only thing that centenarians or people who live to 100 have in common. So I see where you're going with this, and I like your idea. Don't guess at it, test it. See how that food affects you. Go to the drugstore and get the finger prick test, or you informed me now you can get an A1C test. Maybe test once a week and look at your mean glucose average to see the right amount of carbs for you, which leads me to my next question. I thought it was really interesting that you suggest about 15 grams of net carbs per meal, a total of 45 grams of carbs a day, which is very low. So if you can explain that, and then also tell me, when you eat carbs, what are your most recommended types of carbs?
So many problems, Krista, today are caused by carbohydrate excess. So that's what diabetes is, that's what pre-diabetes is, that's what high triglycerides are, that's what fatty liver is. It's an unfortunate name, isn't it? Fatty liver makes people think, including my colleagues, that it's fat that causes not, it's carbohydrates. And so limiting carbohydrates, even after you take out the carbohydrates of grains, has further benefits. So, I've seen this happen. People will say, I'm grain-free now. I love soft drinks or fruit drinks or
No.
candy bars or chocolate, whatever. So if the goal here is ideal health, optimal health, a second step after grain elimination is limiting carbohydrate exposure. And as you point out, I use a rule of thumb of no more than 15 grams net carbohydrates per meal, net carbohydrates, of course, being total carbohydrates minus fiber. If you do that, everything happens even faster. Faster weight loss, getting rid of diabetes drugs and hypertension drugs, getting rid of visceral fat, stopping the progression of cataracts, arthritis, and other conditions. So it's a way to further the benefits of going grain-free. The only carbohydrates I advise are those that are indigestible by humans. The so-called resistant starches, that is resistant to human digestion, that nourish bowel flora. So these would be mostly underground tubers and their equivalents, like a green unripe banana, or inulin, or a raw white potato. These are forms of starches that don't raise blood sugar at all.
You can boil that potato, though, right? And still get the resistant starch, or no?
No.
So you're suggesting eating a raw white potato?
Raw white potato, you can buy, you can chop it up in small cubes in a salad. I like to chop it coarsely and put it in a blender. Add a cup, say, of unsweetened coconut milk, maybe a handful of blueberries, a few drops of stevia. You can make a smoothie out of it. Likewise, the green unripe banana. Now, people who do this should know that you can't go whole hog at the start. You have to. We're trying to get 20 grams per day of these specific fibers. And if you've not done this before, you can get abdominal pain and bloating. So anybody who is new to this conversation should start with about half that, about 10 grams, a half a banana, a half a potato, and build up over about 7 to 10 days. There are other ways to do this, inulin powder and some other preparations you can get, because it's a very powerful means of cultivating bowel flora. And as you know, bowel flora is an incredibly important aspect of human health that we blew off for many years. In fact, giving antibiotics, for instance, indiscriminately, and it wipes out bowel flora. So
I'm right there
with you. Yeah, it's becoming clear that bowel flora is critical for health.
So we okay, and I was just going to ask your stance on legumes. So with resistant starch, which, by the way, you guys, resistant starch is like the new kid on the block, where it's the type of starch that doesn't raise blood sugar. Studies are showing it actually affects your blood sugar less than a serving of meat or eggs, which is quite remarkable. And so what about cannellini beans? I know those are also resistant starch. I've been testing my hummus recipes. Is that something okay? You could have some eggs and cannellini beans with breakfast, or?
Yeah, so as you point out, legumes have some amount of resistant starch. It tends to be small, tends to be on the order of about 2 or 3 or 4 grams per about quarter to half cup serving. One of the problems you run into, though, is so grains have a form of carbohydrate called amylopectin A. That A refers to the structure, the branching structure. Legumes have amylopectin C. So it's not as rapidly digested, doesn't raise blood sugar as high as grains, but it can still raise blood sugar and have all those consequences if you consume enough. It takes about a quarter to about a half a cup or more before you get blood sugar rises from legumes. It differs a little bit. You know, legumes, lentils, chickpeas, red beans, cannellini, they're going to differ somewhat. So all the different forms of beans can raise blood sugar. So we got to be careful about portion sizes, because it'd be a shame to do all these wonderful things like get rid of grains and then still have persistent problem with blood sugar. And so we just got to be careful with the legumes.
Okay, that's great advice and practical advice, which I really appreciate for all of you guys as you're changing your diet and watching this show. You know, I loved talking with you, Bill, right before when you said something. You said really it's about a change in healthcare, and that's what we're going for the show, a paradigm shift. And you said that about 70% of heart procedures are unnecessary, and really what we want to do is flip the paradigm, so it's not sick care anymore, it's health care. And just talk a little bit about that as we close.
You know, my message is really not to pick on wheat and grains and destroy their industry. It's to help people empower themselves in health. Because you know what? As you know, the healthcare system has nothing to do with healthcare. I call the modern healthcare system the system we've created to extract maximum revenues for doctors and hospitals. And sadly, ironically, the information that could be used to empower people and their families in health has exploded. And it's not being passed down by the doctors. It's coming through shows like yours and these kinds of messages and podcasts
And
and
books
blogs,
like this.
books like this.
Books like this.
Because this is the stuff that should dominate our thinking about. It shouldn't be the next drug or the next procedure. You know, robotic surgery and heart transplants get more attention than true messages of health. We've got to put a stop to that and make people aware that the tools for health have become incredibly powerful, but they have to hear about it.
You are true inspiration and single-handedly, honestly, causing a paradigm shift. And thank you for being here.
Thank you,
and,
Krista.
And Bill, would you like to leave our viewers with any final words of wisdom? People who are watching now, really ready to take action in their lives.
You know, so what I'm not advocating is a complex formula of cleanses and purging and enemas. This is a simple shift in diet that gets you started in an astounding you won't appreciate how big these effects can be unless you do it. There's nothing lost. Inconvenience, perhaps, at the most, and you might surprise yourself. You might find that you're 27 pounds lighter after a few weeks. You might find that all those drugs you've been prescribed or all those awful feelings you were having are nothing more than the bagel you were having and the breakfast cereal and bran cereal you had every morning.
Such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you again.
You guys, let food be thy medicine. You know, we talk about how all disease begins in the gut, so healing from the root cause can truly be as simple as making these dietary changes. Dr. Davis has a new book coming out on detox, and you can find all that information at wheatbellyblog.com. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.
You're watching the Randy and Krista Show. I'm Randy Alvarez. We're here with Krista Recchio. So you got to interview Wheat Belly.
Yes!
Finally.
Finally, Wheat Belly in the house. I was really excited about that. We've been talking about it.
Were you nervous?
I said, no, I wasn't nervous, but I was excited. And I said, please book him when I'm in town. And you did. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate that.
Good. What's your takeaway from that?
Well, first of all, I think he's such a likable guy. I love he's likable and humble and smart and really is just trying to spread a mission whose time has come. And I think he's got the power with his book and the cookbooks and the detox coming out to keep pushing this into the mainstream as just common knowledge, because that's the only way we're going to shift healthcare from sick care to really becoming healthcare is educating people individually by the masses and getting them off their bagel for breakfast, you know, and their sandwich for lunch, and then whatever the pasta is they're having for dinner. So I thought he was great. I love the way he breaks things down, and you know, he dispelled some myths for me, although it's kind of a tough thing for me to let go of things like brown rice and quinoa and those.
So he's not a fan of brown
grains.
rice either.
He's not, and I'm a fan of wild rice, which is actually a seed. And but I loved hearing his talks and explanation, and it's cool that he's now bringing resistant starch to the mainstream. I got to try the potato. Have you ever eaten a raw potato?
No, but that's something I could do if I put a little sea salt on there.
And just he said chop it up fine on a salad. We do something to get healthier before each show, so should we try that or blend it up
I'm
ourselves?
all over it.
Okay, and he was also talking off camera, you guys, about using Bob's Red Mill unmodified potato flour, 2 tablespoons a day as your resistant starch. So that could be something that maybe you try, we try, and then we all kind of
What do you do for
reconvene.
that? For resistant starch?
I've been using green bananas in my smoothie. And then cannellini beans. I've been making my hummus out of cannellini beans and adding some parsley and tahini, and it tastes really good.
And you're always healthy, though. I mean, you just got back from a big, 10-day detox?
I did a 10-day detox
at We Care.
At We Care Spa out in the desert.
I have to go.
And do you know the best part of it for me, Randy, is the digital detox and just the kind of checking out from the world and gathering your thoughts and the bird's eye perspective of your life and letting the stress of life just kind of fall away is bigger, and it contributes more to me even than the physical detox, which is quite intense out there. You said you're going to come one of these times.
I know. So. I have to go over there. I'm going to definitely do a weekend, and a lot of your followers and viewers think I need to do more of that.
They do. Do they? I don't get those comments.
I get some hate mail here and there, and they say, Randy, you need to get more educated about certain things, and so that's why I'm just here to ask the questions.
You cannot.
And I've learned a lot from you,
listen, you can never make everybody happy. This is the world of the internet, and so you have to take that with a grain of salt.
But I am going to go. I haven't done anything like that before. So
Okay.
Would you recommend We
You
Care
can't
over
just-
the others?
Well, I don't know. I want to try Salnaviv down in Mexico and Rancho La Puerta. I think at this point, like for the adrenals and the thyroid, the next time I do something, I'm going to go to a place where I can also eat.
Oh, so there's no food.
There's no food.
You don't have any weight to lose,
You're
right?
doing, and yeah,
Did you lose weight?
I did lose weight. I lost about 5 pounds, but then when you start eating, it comes back. But yeah, you want to like anchor your blood sugar. You want blood sugar to get too low. Like he doesn't want to get too high. You also don't want it to get too low.
Okay, good. Well, you know what? We're going to wrap up the show.
Yeah.
You interviewed him.
Yeah,
Final
I interviewed
thoughts?
him. So if you haven't read the book Wheat Belly, I know you guys are very savvy. Many of you have. This is a great book to pass along to your mother, sister, brother, cousin, aunt who still is having a bagel every single day and just thinks it's the best thing and the healthiest thing for them because it's fat-free. So go ahead and spread the message and the mission with news that makes you healthier.